Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and welcome to my 1 to 99 melee guide. The goal of this guide is to give you any information that you need to train your attack, strength, and defense levels from any point from 1 to 99. There's a ton of methods out there for training these stats, but these are the ones that I prefer to use. There's a lot of little nuances to combat that I'll try to go over without making this a super long video, but at any point if you have any questions about the video, feel free to leave them in the comments section below so I can get back to you as soon as possible. In this guide, I'm going to start by discussing what weapons and armor you should use, including some of the armor sets that give solid bonuses. Then we'll talk about how melee training actually works in terms of XP gains and how to train each stat and what order to train them in. Then I'll talk about what quests you can do to get started quickly with your training. And finally, we'll get into the leveling guide, which I'll show the methods that I use to train these stats quickly, followed by some options to make a little bit of money when you're on your way to maxing them out. First, we'll talk about weaponry. Which weapon to use is an easy choice for early levels. Just using the highest level skimmy you can is pretty straightforward until you get to the dragon variant. You need a complete monkey madness to wield the dragon skimmy, not just have 60 attack. This goes for really all dragon weaponry, and just dragon items in general tend to have some sort of quest requirement. At 70 attack, you can use the Abyssal Whip for attack and defense training. You can get strength XP with the shared option on the whip, which gives even experience between attack, strength, and defense. It's not a bad way to train your stats, but there's other ways to catch up on your strength XP. At 75, you can use the Abyssal Tentacle, which is an Abyssal Whip with a Kraken tentacle attached. It's much stronger than a whip, but it will degrade back into a tentacle after 10,000 charges, making it a little more expensive to use, but still faster XP overall. For some strength training weapons, I'm going to start with the Saradomin Sword. The Sarah Sword is basically a two-handed whip, but it has a strength training option. It's also very cheap and doesn't degrade, which is kind of nice. The Abyssal Dagger is a one-handed weapon. It's a little bit more powerful than a Sarah Sword as long as it's combined with a good offensive shield. I will talk about armor and things after the weapons though. The Abbey Dagger is not a bad option for strength training while being generally affordable. The Abyssal Bludgeon is my favorite strength weapon in the game. It's a two-handed weapon that attacks pretty quickly and hits very hard. Even though it's fairly expensive, it's one of the best options for your general strength training. Special attack weapons do increase the amount of damage that you can do, which is how you get more XP for combat training. There's a lot of different weapons with a special attack, but some of them are focused on hitting harder or even hitting multiple times. Some of these are pretty pricey, but I suggest at least getting a Dragon Dagger once you hit 60 attack, which also requires the completion of the Lost City quest. The Dagger's special attack hits twice in succession and only requires 25% of your special attack bar. It's suggested to bring these weapons with you while you train along with your main weapon, and only switch to them to use the special attack, then switch back. You don't have to use special attack weapons to train, but they will add a little bit of XP per hour while you're at it. Let's talk about armor for a little bit. There's many different pieces of armor you can wear. Many of them are only for defensive purposes, which doesn't really speed up your combat training, so we'll try to skip over those for the most part. But up until 40 defense, it's pretty easy to decide on your main parts of armor, moving up to rune. At 60 defense, you can start adding dragon pieces to your armor, and at 70 defense, you unlock different Barrows armor sets that you can wear. All of these armor pieces alone are just defensive bonuses, but if you wear a full Barrows set, some of them have nice bonuses there too. We'll get into the Barrows sets in a minute though. Some armor pieces do give offensive bonuses, especially in the more niche armor slots like gloves, boots, rings, and necklaces. Many of the better gloves in the game are rewards from quests. You can climb up the normal ladder from bronze to Barrows by completing parts of the recipe for disaster subquests. Barrows gloves are the second best melee gloves in the game at the moment, followed by Ferocious gloves, which require 80 defense and attack to wear, and you have to do the Dragon Slayer 2 quest to make them out of Hydra leather. The simplest gloves to get would be a combat bracelet. This bracelet's like a pair of mithril gloves, but it has no requirements other than a little bit of money to buy them. I do suggest you are getting your quest done so you can get up to at least Barrows gloves though. For the boots, we also have the same tier ladder from bronze to dragon. Only for adamant boots and higher do you actually get an offensive bonus from these boots though. Even lower tier boots are worth having to take a little bit less damage when you train, but it's the addy and up that's going to make a difference in XP rates. The primordial boots are a step up from dragon boots, and even though they are pretty pricey, they're the best boots in the game and will give you a nice bonus if you have enough money to buy them. The ring slot is pretty straightforward. There's 3 rings in the game that can help offensively for melee at the moment. First we have the DK's rings, which would be the Warrior and the Berserker ring. The Warrior ring gives an attack bonus for slash, which is nice for skimmies, and the whip, but the Berserker ring gives a strength bonus, which is nice for any kind of melee weapon. Also in OSRS, strength bonus tends to be more helpful for faster kills than accuracy does, so the Berserker ring is definitely the way to go. Both of these rings can be imbued in the Nightmare Zone to double their stats. I will bring up Nightmare Zone again a little bit later. There's also a new Brimstone ring, which acts as every DK's ring and Wildy ring outside of the Ring of the Gods. Clearly off the bat, this sounds like the best option, but the thing about this ring is you can't imbue it, so you're stuck to just regular ring stats, and having an imbued Berserker ring is just going to be a better option for better XP overall. Offensive necklaces can play an important role in your melee training. The Amulet of Torture is the best in slot melee amulets, but the Amulet of Fury is a great option too, and even an Amulet of Glory is going to help you a lot, and it's pretty cheap. None of these amulets have specific requirements as long as you can afford to buy them. Most early game shields don't have an offensive boost, so wearing a kite shield up to rune is really not a problem and you don't have to focus too hard on it. But once you hit 60 defense, you can buy an obsidian shield, aka the Taketzil, which does have a nice strength bonus on it. The best offensive shields are defenders though. If you have a strength and attack level that combine to 130, usually done with just 65 in each, then you can enter the Warriors Guild. Killing the Cyclops in the Warriors Guild can get you up to a Dragon Defender, which is a very good offensive shield. And if you have a lot of cash to work with, you can buy the Avernic Defender hilt to attach to a Dragon Defender and make yourself an Avernic Defender. This is very pricey, but it is a very powerful offensive shield and will increase your XP rates. Not a lot of capes in the game offer a solid offensive bonus. The Fire Cape is the most common option. It does require you to beat Jad in the fight caves though. If you happen to be having any trouble getting your Fire Cape, I have left a link to my Fire Cape guide in the description. If you're an absolute beast and you've got yourself an Infernal Cape by beating the Inferno, then you could use that instead, though I imagine most folks looking to train some lower melee levels haven't really gotten to the Inferno yet. On the final notes of armor and weapons, we'll talk about full set bonuses. First, we have the Darrock's armor set, which is from Barrows. While wearing the full set, the armor gives you extra strength depending on how many health points you're missing. This combined with a rock cake, which is a reward from the Dwarf Recipe for Disaster subquest and allows you to damage yourself down to 1 health. It gives you the chance to hit very high, but also leaves you at 1 health, so obviously it's only useful in certain situations. Obsidian armor gives some boost to obsidian weapons if you're wearing the full set. Full set for the boost only includes the plate body, the plate legs, and the helmet. I usually go for the obsidian sword, aka the Taketzil for my obsidian weapon of choice, but you also have the mace and the maul to work with. The Berserker necklace has a similar type of boost for using obsidian weapons, but the boost stacks with obsidian armor, so it's suggested to also use that necklace with your obsidian armor. Void armor has some really nice bonuses with it. While wearing the full set with melee helm, you get a boost of 10% damage and accuracy for melee. They're fairly low requirements, but it does take some time to get the gear from pest control. Void has basically 0 defense, which makes it not useful in every situation compared to best in slot gear, but it is solid gear to train with if you're willing to grind out your pest control, especially if you don't have a lot of money to spend on other gear. It doesn't actually cost you any money to get it, just a little bit of time, and even though time equals money, this is nice armor. I believe that's all the info I wanted to give about weapons and armor. It was a little more long-winded than I'd hoped, but there's a lot of armor possibilities out there. So when I get into the leveling guide, I'll do my best to show what pieces of gear I'm generally wearing, but if you have any questions about gear, just let me know in the comments section below. Before you start to train your melee stats, there's a few quests you can do to get a head start on XP. The biggest one to do is the Waterfall quest. This is a very easy quest to do, with a couple of sections that you have to run by some higher level monsters if you're at 3 combat, but shouldn't take very much effort. Completing this quest will take you from 1 to 30 in both of your strength and attack skills. Lots of other quests for quick XP tend to have small requirements like a 25 agility or 20 attack, so you can do that Holy Grail for some defense XP, but they're all pretty low requirements. If you want a full list of quests you can get done, I have left a link in the description to the wiki's list on that. I generally suggest getting at least Waterfall quests done, and then any of the others that you decide to do can save you a little bit of grind time. I'll be jumping into the leveling guide in a sec, but there's a few things about combat training I should mention before telling you to just go fight things. XP is based off of how much damage you do. When you hit a 1, you should be getting 4 attack XP and 1 HP XP, or 4 defense or strength, depending on what your attack style is. To change attack styles, you need to click on the Combat Options tab like they taught you on Tutorial Island. Hovering over the attack style is going to show you what kind of experience you'll get. In this guide, I generally will be saying like from levels 1 to 10 or 10 to 20, and by that I mean from 1 to 10 in all 3 attack, strength, and defense. I usually go for training strength first, then attack, then defense. At lower levels, it's not a bad idea to do your attack first though, so you unlock some higher tier weapons to work with until you're about 70 in each attack and strength. More importantly, you want to let defense be your last one since it doesn't add any damage per hour, so it doesn't really help in the XP department. I usually try to keep these levels all within 10 of each other, so when I have a section that's more than 10 levels, I usually do 10 at a time, but that's kind of up to you. Finally, what about that leveling guide? I'm going to start the guide from level 1 for those who refuse to do any questing to get their early levels done. Levels 1 to 10, I would simply kill some chickens at the Lumbridge farm. Chickens have insanely low defense. In fact, some of their defense bonuses are straight up in the negatives, so they can't hit you very well, and they're also perfect for entry-level training. At low combat levels, XP rates are going to be very spotty, but you won't be in there for very long, so it's not really going to matter. Right at level 1, I would be using an iron skimmy, but at level 5, you can switch to a steel weapon, so the steel skimmy is going to be a fine upgrade. Levels 10 to 20, I would move over to the cows at the farm right next to you. Cows have a slightly better defensive bonuses, which is why I wait till 10 on the melees, but they also have more health to work with, so you don't have to switch monsters as often. These are still very simple to kill and will have some spotty XP rates since you're lower level. If you're feeling spunky, you could bank the cow hides for some low level profit, but it's going to be faster for you to just ignore the drop and gain some XP for now. At level 10, you unlock black weaponry, so you could upgrade a little bit. I usually just stick with steel skimmy until 20 attack though for simplicity. Levels 20 to 40, I would move on to sand crabs. Lots of players fight rock crabs right around these levels too. I find that the sand crabs work out a little better overall, even though they are both fine options. These crabs are located on the southern beach of the Hosidius house in Zaya. Sand crabs have a lot of health with low defense, which makes them perfect for training. It's also a very popular spot though, so you might find the worlds are a little bit crowded. You should start this section with a myth skimmy. At 30 attack, you can use your addy skimmy. And once you hit 40, you can start using rune weapons, but right around then, you might be moving on to the next section. Levels 40 all the way to 70, I would camp Ammonite crabs. These are located on Fossil Island, which means you've got to do the Bone Voyage quest to fight them. Ammonite crabs have a lot higher health than sand crabs with similar defense levels. They're a little more spaced out than the sand crabs, but they tend to be less crowded, so there really shouldn't be much of an issue here. Once you hit 60 attack, you should get the Dragon Skimmy, which does require Monkey Madness, remember, but it's going to increase your XP rates a lot. Also, by this time, you should be filling in other armor slots with offensive weapons if you haven't already. Amulet of Glory, the Combat Bracelet, and the Obsidian Shield at 60 defense are all pretty cheap options and will increase your speed. If you've got more money to work with though, you always want to be upgrading to higher tier things. Also during these levels, you'll get to a point where you can enter the Warriors Guild. I suggest going for that grind for the Dragon Defender as soon as you can. In this section, you can also make sure when you get to the 60s, you can wear your Obsidian armor before you go to the 70s. The Obsidian armor has nice bonuses and it'll get you some of the best XP rates here. I also suggest right around this section to start using super attack and strength potions to help you speed up the process a little. They're pretty cheap and they can help out a lot with XP rates. 70 plus is when I go for the Nightmare Zone. The Nightmare Zone is a mini game that you can refight old bosses that you killed in the past. For full details on how the Nightmare Zone works, I have left my link to my Nightmare Zone guide in the description, but here's a look at the setup that I bring with me to the Nightmare Zone. The important part is the full Darox, and the other gear you can fill in with the best stuff you've got to work with. You get to use overloads and absorption potions inside the Nightmare Zone, which means if you rock cake down to 1 health and sip an overload, you'll be hitting insane damage, and those absorption potions will make sure you don't get knocked out for sitting just at 1 health. Right at 70 melee stats, your Darox is going to be fairly inaccurate, but eventually you're going to be getting over 100k XP an hour, which is kind of nice. This is also some of the most AFK training in the game, which is one of the reasons that I like it so much. The 5 monsters I use for XP are the Sand Snake, King Roald, Moss Giant, Ice Troll, and the Khazard Warlord. But again, I left a link to the Nightmare Zone guide in the description because there's a lot of information on Nightmare Zone itself. I'm not really trying to add another 10 minutes to this guide. There's a lot of other methods that are good for melee XP, like bandits, experiments, and even giant spiders in the Stronghold of Security. If you have any questions about methods we've talked about so far, be sure to let me know. Let's talk about making money while you're training melee. There's one answer on how to make money with combat that's very simple and really should be stuck with for everybody. The answer is Slayer. You train your Slayer if you want to make money. Training your combat with Slayer is, in general, a pretty good idea since you're getting combat XP and you're training Slayer at the same time, but that doesn't really make it a bad idea to train your melees before going to Slayer. It's not necessarily a waste of time. You'll have much faster Slayer tasks if you're 100 combat rather than 50 combat when you do it. So having higher combat going in can shorten those crappy tasks that you don't like to do and make your lower level Slayer go faster, but it is efficient to do Slayer as soon as possible. As you get higher Slayer level, you unlock some solid moneymakers that you could grind out, like Cave Horrors, Wyverns, Gargoyles, or even Slayer bosses like Cerberus and the Kraken, which also profit pretty well. Not all combat moneymakers have to be Slayer related. Chaos Druids are a good low-level moneymaker for melee, and Blue Dragons have some good mid-level requirements, but you make some solid cash in the long run too. Even Ents end up being some pretty good money per hour, though not many people try them out. It's nice to make a lot of money from a 99, but there's also good reason to speed through your combat levels until you're high enough level to make a lot of money instead of just some money over the long run. Generally, bossing doesn't lead to the best XP per hour, and you want to be the highest level you can for going for faster kills, but stopping in the 90s with combat training and then camping out a boss is not a bad idea for money, and the XP really does add up. My favorite example is the range XP you get from Vorkath, but this is a melee guide, so we can lean on things like the Giant Mole, which is not terrible XP at all since you get to crank with Darox, but it's also on the lower side of GP in terms of bossing. You could camp out Bandos for some really solid profit, and even though it's slower in the XP per hour department, the idea of Bandos camping trip is that you would get a lot of kills, which adds up to a lot of XP. Even fighting Vedian with the Vigora Chain Mace is pretty good melee XP, and makes a lot of money per hour, unless of course, you're getting PK'd constantly. Overall, there are a lot of different combat options that can make you some pretty solid cash. Generally, you're looking to have higher combat because no matter which option that is, if you can do more damage and get more kills, you'll make more money. So I suggest going for faster XP up until higher combat, and then try out some bossing or some money makers. I think this was a good rundown for your melee training. Clearly there's a lot going on with training these skills, so if you still have any questions, let me know in the comments section below, and I can get back to you as soon as possible. If you have any tips of your own, feel free to leave those in the comments section too, since obviously everyone here is just trying to find the best way for them to get some XP. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you got some useful information, or you enjoyed the video in general, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Thanks again for watching, and best of luck on your melee grind.